If you're an American conservative, you know that the societal values we hold sacred are under attack. They are hanging in the balance. How can you protect those values? By staying informed. The Closing Argument will deliver news and supporting evidence you need to support and defend those values. Here's Paul Smith.
Good morning. This is Paul Smith, your host of The Closing Argument. In these podcasts, we discuss some of the important but controversial moral, legal, and political issues that we are facing today. Some of the things we discuss are a little controversial, but they need to be discussed because some of the traditional values that are so important to our life in America are being challenged and are becoming a part of our government, our school curriculum, and some of them are not right and need adjustments, and some of them need to be eliminated. Today, as we are celebrating the birth of the United States, that is Independence Day in 2022, I want to talk about America being the base of God's operations. Now, this discussion today is a little unusual, and it's about our nation, but it's one that you probably can't discuss in school and even some of our churches. But as an independent voice, being not connected with anything other than myself, I can say these things, which actually I believe a majority of the Americans feel. That is, that America is God's nation, that He loves this land and that He will bless us and prosper us as long as we serve Him. This is the foundation of the forming of America. Now, I mention this because today America is being criticized. It is being labeled as a flawed nation. And one of the most strong criticisms that it has systemic racism that is throughout. In my opinion, those who advance the systemic racism threat, like critical race theory and the founding of this nation, they say in 1619, which was when the first slaves were brought to Virginia, those who try to advance this narrative, I believe, are wrong. I believe they sell America short, and they actually hurt us celebrating and advancing our connection with God in helping not only our own nation, but in helping all the world. That's why I want to discuss this. Now, America was founded by primarily men who believed in God and believed that He was supporting our effort. The Constitution was established by men that God raised up for that specific purpose. Now, I don't hear a lot of religions saying that. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I believe that God has actually stated that He was behind the founding of America and He supports the Constitution, and that America, as a place where freedom is preserved, was the place and the country that is to be the base of His operations as he prepares the world for the second coming of the Savior. And as long as we continue to serve God and to advance His purposes, He will bless us, just as He did in the Revolutionary War and in other great endeavors and battles. I'm proud to be an American. Mount Zion, prophesied in the book of Isaiah especially, prophesied to be the ensign to the world, is the base of God's operations and is the United States of America. Now, one of the reasons this issue is so important is because of these criticisms that are so prominent and so prevalent today against America, calling it a flawed and a defective nation. This focus on flaws and defects is a mistake, in my opinion. But first, I want to go back to the founding of the nation. Now, I have ancestors who were pilgrims who came here in 1620 on the Mayflower. They were Congregationalists, or a group that separated from the Church of England. They came here for religious purposes. And New England was a very tough place. My ancestors survived. John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley were the two that were on the Mayflower. And I had other ancestors that came to the Massachusetts area in the early 1630s. One of them was William Wardwell, a close associate to Anne Hutchinson, and he was, I would guess you'd call him a Presbyterian. He had a religious belief close to the Calvinists. And in fact, so they actually were, he was kicked out of Salem in Massachusetts in about 1637, if I recall the date right, because his views didn't square with most of the other pilgrims. John Lathrop, who came to Massachusetts in about 1633, he was also a Congregationalist, and he had been basically exiled from England because his views didn't square with the Church of England. So these three of my ancestors who came here for religious reasons, and they were not alone. Many of the early colonies in America came here for religious reasons. I just mentioned that just to give you a typical slice, so to speak, of that. And many of them believed that God was behind the founding of this nation and that things were going to happen here that were going to be very important. I would draw your attention to the fact that there are many Mount Zion roads on the eastern coast of the United States of America. And if you just take a second to think of what that means, it refers to multiple prophecies of, in the latter days, God setting up an ensign on the mountain or in the mountains to all the world. And if you understand and follow these prophecies, that they show that it's in relation to gathering together the elect of God in preparation for Jesus' second coming. As a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I also believe in the Book of Mormon, an ancient record of another group of Christians who were in America from 600 BC to 400 AD. One of the messages in that book is extremely significant and applies today. The prophet Ether wrote, the prophet Moroni said this, that behold, this is a choice land, and whatsoever nation shall possess it shall be free from bondage and from captivity and from all other nations under heaven, if they will but serve the God of the land, who is Jesus Christ. And I believe that. Now, this doesn't mean that I exclude other religions. In fact, the very basis of God's true religion is that people should be free, have the freedom to choose who they will worship. And that includes the right to decide whether to believe in God or not, whatever your religion is. But it is the foundation which does allow people to believe in Jesus Christ and to have him as their master and the basis for political positions that they take. Now, the threat that we face currently in the United States, those who follow what's going on in the news are very much aware of it. I will mention at least three current threats that I regard, and their excessive criticism of this nation. Because if you're excessively critical of the United States and considered a flawed and terrible nation, you don't have the right attitude to help it become as good as it can be. We clearly have flaws, but we need to recognize that God will bless and prosper us as we commit to serve him. Three of these current problems are the critical race theory, which has infected much of our education system. This includes the 1619 Project, which highlights and focuses on the first slaves being brought to the 13 colonies area, being brought to Virginia, and people trying to say that that was the foundation of our nation, that it couldn't have survived had we not brought slaves here, and that was a defective foundation of America. Again, as I said earlier, I dispute that. In fact, my ancestor who came over on the Mayflower, John Howland, came over as a slave, so to speak. He was an indentured servant and was able to obtain his freedom shortly after he came here. But those people who came here for religious freedom, including the Catholics in Maryland and the Quakers in Pennsylvania and other religions in the New England area, they came here for religious freedom, and slavery was not a fundamental part at all of their success and of their reasons for being here. Some of these another critical current critical movement is the Black Lives Matter movement. I have no problem with the words Black Lives Matter. Of course they matter. The problem with the BLM movement is that it's been overtaken and controlled by the socialists and Marxists and the anarchists who were responsible for many, if not most, of the riots we had in 2020 that caused millions of dollars of damages, took lives, and basically took the position that these types of riots and violence were okay because America is a racist place and therefore it's okay to go to, break in stores and disrupt things and cause violence and even killing people. If that happens, that's okay. I am very upset with this, and I think that's the wrong point of view. There are several books that have promoted this view. It probably maybe the foundation of this sad movement was Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States that was first published in 1980, I believe. And that gives a broad history of the United States and paints a picture of serious flaws of many people who helped establish America, beginning with Columbus and the founders and so forth. That whole approach of finding fault with leaders of America is counterproductive, and it doesn't present the true character of many of these people, and it contributes to a view of our country that is not right. We have flaws, we continue to have flaws, but God was behind the founding of this nation and continues to support it as long as we will do our best to be righteous and try to serve him and allow freedom so that people can serve Jesus Christ, the God of this world. Another book that is a little more current was a book by Richard Posner, who was closely connected with Harvard University. And after the 2008 stock market crash, wrote a book, A Failure of Capitalism. And Harvard supported this book and the negative view it presents about capitalism. Well, one of the problems with attacking capitalism is that capitalism has come to have a very negative connotation to many people. But capitalism is the system that allows freedom to operate in what we do economically. And attacks on capitalism are attacks on our free enterprise system and freedom and on the right to private property, fundamentals of the freedom and the prosperity in America. It's sad and I'm disappointed that Harvard would support this view. Harvard is the oldest and perhaps most prestigious university in our country. Interestingly, its founder, Henry Dunster, founded the college, I think it was about 1641, but 14 years into his presidency, he was ousted from Harvard because he opposed the baptism of infants. He felt it was wrong that baptism was for those who were responsible, and infants, of course, were not. And because he espoused this view, he was kicked out of Harvard. And I would say this began the sad foundation for Harvard today, which is now the foundation of many of these negative views about our country that attack the very fundamental foundations of the greatness of America, and that is our belief in God and the need to worship him. It is so interesting, as I have read about the founders, many of the founders, including James Madison, for example, the